Welcome to Inside Small Business Policy, where we draw connections between small businesses and the public policy issues that shape the way they operate. I'm John Arnsmeyer, founder and CEO of Small Business Majority. Today, we're fortunate to be chatting with Rachel Bernier Green, owner of EJ Consortium in Chicago. Rachel helps mission-driven small businesses eliminate entrepreneurial poverty and build community wealth through expert financial and operational strategies. Previously, she had another business, a bakery on the south side of Chicago. Rachel is also a member of Small Business Majority's Illinois Small Business Council, and we're proud to have her participation. Thanks so much for being here, Rachel.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm going to start by framing our conversation. I'd love to hear the backstory of how you started both of your businesses, about the passion that led you to do this, your excitement, your fears, what was unexpected, and what you've learned. Just kind of the story behind both of them.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story. My family actually, they always joke that when I was younger, I dressed up, instead of dressing up as a princess or a doctor, I dressed up as Oprah or Madam C.J. Walker. And so I was always emulating, these powerhouse entrepreneurs. And so whenever I'm not running a business, the question with my family is not is she going to do it again? It's just when is the next idea going to start? And the bulk of that time has been in operating social enterprises. So building companies that had a triple bottom line impact where we were, wanted to operate with financial excellence, but we also had an environment, an impact we wanted to make on the environment or society. With Lane's Bake Shop, I started that in I think 2015. And when I started, we were primarily wholesaling clean label baked goods to Whole Foods. Whole Foods actually referred us to Starbucks. I had a chance to, through that business, to meet Walter Robb a couple of times and was actually invited to Seattle to speak about the work that we were doing. While we were there, someone kind of came into a room where I was speaking. They tapped me on the shoulder and they said, "Hey, Howard wants to speak with them." And, in my mind, I'm like, clearly there's another Howard that works here that would like to talk to us about our little mission-driven bakery on the south side of Chicago. But it ended up being Howard Schultz. And we got to sit down, talk to him about what we were building, the impact that we were making. And he sent us on a kind of bakery run around Seattle to some of his favorite spots. But all of that happened because we were, yes, making great product, but we had a really compelling story because we were hiring people that were previously incarcerated. In Chicago, we get a lot of negative attention for crime and violence. And my hypothesis was, if we can provide really high quality jobs, that we can drive down recidivism and violence. And so that was what we did. And we did that by baking delicious products and selling them in our retail bakeries and wholesale. And then in January of 2020, the ceiling actually caved in at our manufacturing facility. And we moved, did an emergency move with our tons of equipment, got up and licensed in a new place. And within a few weeks, COVID happened. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for that business. And unfortunately, for the people we had on payroll when the business closed that had been previously incarcerated, within several months, everyone who had been involved in the justice system was back in the justice system. And we found ourselves writing character letters and really trying to advocate for these individuals. There were some of the best employees and best people, that I've ever met. And all of that experience and kind of seeing how we tumbled to the end really fed into why I created EJ Consortium, because I've seen other purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and often we make the profitability of the business sub to the mission because we feel like we're doing great work, not realizing that if we don't operate in financial excellence, including paying the entrepreneurs well, eliminating that entrepreneurial poverty, that we are actually jeopardizing the impact that we're making. And so EJ Consortium came about because I had my background before Lane's Bake Shop, where I actually have worked in accounting, finance, and operations. All of the things I learned from that time as an entrepreneur and the coaching I'd done for other small businesses. And now we've put it all in one place to help purpose-driven enterprises to become permanently profitable and highly impactful. So it's an amazing place to be. I feel like I'm walking in my calling now, and really excited about all of the great work we've done and everything that we are doing moving forward.
Wow, that's quite a story. I mean, I love the Howard Schultz story. Really sorry about what happened with the bakery. We've made providing both entrepreneurial and employment opportunities for previously incarcerated folks a big part of what we do. That's
Yeah.
educating small businesses about how they can do that more easily,
Yes.
understanding what their concerns are, and then sort of on the entrepreneurial level, seeing entrepreneurship as a possible path forward. Working with the SBA and other agencies to the SBA actually has really changed their quote unquote good character policy around lending. Now the question is, can they convince enough banks to do that as well? So really exciting to hear about how those two things merged, and really excited to hear how you took. I mean, very sorry to hear what happened to some of your employees, but really excited to hear how you kind of took that passion and transformed that into what you're doing now. I mean, what's been sort of what have you learned in the last couple of years doing this, or your whole journey for that matter? What's been most sort of unexpected, and what challenges have you faced that, and how have you dealt with them?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. Um, let's see. I think the biggest challenge overall has just been in how critical resilience and perseverance are for operating a small business, but also how important it is not to deal with those things in a silo. I think as entrepreneurs and small business owners, people have a tendency to put their needs on the back burner. We run ourselves ragged, wear multiple hats, and it's not sustainable. I see a lot of small business owners that are struggling with chronic health issues, and the answer is just push, 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 work harder, work harder, work harder. And I think the most important thing I've learned is that doesn't work. That's not the answer. That sometimes we have to take a step back and think about how do we work differently so that we can show up in a way that supports all of our stakeholders well. And that means, yes, our companies, our employees, but also our families. And so people who worked with me, 10 years or 15 years ago, they sometimes joke like, who are you? Because I have a radically different approach to how I run businesses, what I think healthy ways to engage are. And then there's actually like a lot of science that backs it up, that when we overwork, our creativity and our problem solving skills decline. We're not able to show up and lead in the ways that we want to lead. And it becomes a competitive advantage when I'm going out and hiring, because I'm creating a much healthier culture than the person I was 15 years ago would have created. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons. And then specifically for purpose-driven entrepreneurs, my biggest lesson is that purpose is not a proxy for poverty, and that there is not a benefit in impoverishing or underpaying yourself to accomplish a mission that is then in jeopardy if you fall apart and are not there to execute, and your business model is not built in a way that supports having someone wear all of the hats you're wearing. Took a long time to get there, but I think that those are my biggest takeaways from all the time I've spent in entrepreneurship.
Well, I founded and ran a small business for 10 years before I started Small Business Majority. I've been running Small Business Majority for almost 20 years. And yeah, you always think you have it figured out, and then you find out you don't have it figured out.
You don't.
And it's it's interesting. I love it, but it is really interesting. And you have to your point. Well, first of all, to your point, you've got to keep focusing on how are we going to execute on the mission, and that's what I'm hearing from you. I'm
Yeah.
hearing, and that may not be what you thought, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so this whole notion of flexibility and being able to change is really essential. And again, I'm hearing that loud and clear from you. Again, I think what I'm also hearing though is that the mission is still paramount, and you've got to just figure out different ways to do that. And you also mentioned resilience, and again, that's been my experience that you have to be resilient, because you just don't know
Yes.
what's coming down the pike. And well, I mean, for you, even more dramatically than anything that ever happened to me was COVID. And we actually were in a position where we could be helpful, but we were
Yeah.
we were dealing with a lot of businesses like yours where didn't have that flexibility, and yet you turned that into something that's really exciting, and that you sort of
Yeah.
based on everything you learned, and that is really amazing. So along those lines, and of course, technical assistance and providing support to small businesses is so critical to what we do. Love to hear a little bit more about the sort of range of products, range of services you're providing, and how you found in a evolving post-COVID environment that's going.
Yeah. So we primarily offer fractional CFO and COO retainer services. We also have what technically we call it a VIP day. I often refer to it internally as our overwhelmed entrepreneur makeover, where we have an entire business day where myself and my team, we come together with a business owner to help jumpstart their progress toward their biggest goals. And we found that we, in those periods, can make a transformative impact. So that's been a cool product that we've rolled out recently.
Yeah, no, having that structure and having a framework and working internally as much as externally, and having the two align is
Yeah,
really important. So would love to look forward to actually digging in a little more with you about ways that we could even work more closely together with this new with your new enterprise. So I want to
I love
shift
that.
gears. Yeah, we'd love to as well. And as you know, Chicago is a big. I don't know if your business is just in Chicago, but Chicago is one of our offices and a big focus of ours. So would love to talk further about that. So shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about a couple of issues here. So I my understanding is that, and you and many other businesses, healthcare had high cost of healthcare, access to healthcare has really been a
Yeah.
struggle. And so love to hear a little more about your thoughts on that. Also, where you get your health insurance, how's the cost and availability impact your business, and just love to kind of hear how the whole issue of healthcare is sort of woven into your business experience.
Yes. So I actually have had a recent development as of yesterday that is very kind of central to this conversation about healthcare. So I have several chronic illnesses that I manage, and my son will be 2 in a couple of weeks. He suffered some catastrophic birth injuries when he was born that led to a medically complex start to his life. But because of my health issues, I was around before the ACA, and I had a job that did not provide health insurance, and I had to pay for COBRA insurance, which was so expensive that I had to live with my parents, and it did not cover any of those pre-existing conditions. And so I eventually went into a career where I had group health insurance, and that was what held me back from going into entrepreneurship for so long, because it wasn't an option for me to be uninsured. And so I've seen firsthand the impact that we've had there. at different points in times, my husband, who I worked with Lanes, he actually went back to work full time to get health insurance, but he was the sales engine behind the company that helped us go from landing in one Whole Foods to right before things fell apart, we were actually in the process of expanding to Canadian stores with Whole Foods, and we're servicing entire regions. And so having him go back to work was, catastrophic for our business. Most recently, we've utilized COBRA insurance from my husband's previous job, but as of Monday, we no longer have access to that COBRA insurance. So we had to go through the marketplace to get a new insurance plan. Between my son and I, we have 15 medical appointments this month. In a pre-ACA world, that could lead to bankruptcy, literally. And so we rely on the access, being able to just go and select a plan. I can drop in my doctors, I can drop in his doctors and find out where we can get coverage, is a game changer. So yes, I'm in a stressful temporary month, but it does not mean that I have to sacrifice, my son's well-being or access to doctors. Like, there is a solution there that is significantly more affordable and provides more coverage than what we had pre-ACA. But as a result of, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, as a result of all of this, it's become one of my top priorities that in January next year that we will offer fully employer covered health insurance through my company. When I started, it was just me on payroll, so it didn't really make sense, but we're at a point where that is something that we have in the budget and are planning to roll out in January, and to give that peace of mind, yes, to myself, but also to my team members. I can't articulate how much it means to me to be able to take something this heavy off of their plates and they know that it's covered. But at the end of the day, access to quality medical care and health insurance, I firmly believe, should not be tied solely to your job, because I've seen, people suffer. I've suffered, have damaged my health in ways because I couldn't access healthcare at times. And so I understand that there are very real consequences when we don't have solid policy in place to support people when it comes to affordable access to healthcare.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your son's medical issues and also yours, but you're really highlighting the reality is that that we really do need to remove healthcare costs from and access from interfering in any way with our business operations. Look, right now, we of course agree with you. We were instrumental in getting the small business voice heard during the debate on the ACA. Yeah. We do still have a crazy quilt patchwork system. It's way better than pre-ACA, as you said. There are options, and we counsel business owners to kind of look for what's the best option for them. And I get kudos to you and thank you for being able to offer coverage to your employees starting in January. Some businesses can't afford to do that, so certainly the marketplaces have been a godsend. And in fact, over half of the participants in the marketplaces were small business owners, employees, self-employed people. So it's so integrally tied in with the ability to start businesses, to be entrepreneurs in this country. And we're hearing a lot about that these days, and we want to make sure that stays front and center. We also want to make sure that the subsidies that are in there for the marketplaces continue. They're going to run out at the end of 2025. I couldn't agree with you more that we need to try, as we move forward, disconnect as much as possible, healthcare from your particular business situation. But right now, that is the reality, and at least folks have way more options than they had pre-ACA. So I'd love to continue to have you join with us as we continue to push forward to make sure that those options are kept as accessible and as low cost as possible. Kind of a
Absolutely.
related issue is childcare, and I don't know. I would think, given your situation, this is something you have to deal with. We have just this wasn't something we had focused on that much a while ago. It has really exploded in our world as a
Yeah.
major issue, and of course, the subsidies that were in place, federal subsidies for childcare providers, ran out last fall. And we are just hearing it loud and clear, and we're trying to figure out, where do we go on the federal
Yeah.
and state level to fix this. So would love to hear your story, your thoughts, and love to sort of have you share your experience on childcare issues.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, I think that we have to shift the conversation around childcare because access to quality childcare is actually a public good. So it impacts those of us with children, but it also impacts everyone else because having access to high quality childcare both better positions the child and has a tremendous impact on their trajectory in life in terms of um, proclivity to um, be involved in violent activities or criminal activities, or how likely they are to go to um, school, how well they do in school. Like there are all of these indicators that are tied to um, quality early childhood education, and that matters, should matter to all of us. Um, but as a small business owner and an employer, I often see people who are struggling to get access to healthcare. It impacts how they can show up and do their work. Um, and then for myself, and thankfully my son, he has blown past all kinds of expectations. And so a fight to find quality, childcare in the grand scheme of things for me, it's, this is a challenge we can take on, but it is a serious issue. It impedes people's ability to show up to work, to keep their jobs. And if I'm spending time, negotiating the childcare landscape, then, I'm not taking care of my business and my employees the way that I should. And it's also not fair, to my son, because I need to show up and do my work so that I can be fully present um, and give him the best version of me, which, is very difficult to do when you're just trying to figure out how do you keep your kid in consistently safe care where they have a chance to, learn, be in a safe environment. Other countries have done it, which is one of the things that's astounding to me, that America, we're really out of line with our peers when it comes to both access to quality early education, but also when it comes to family leave, because we have kind of made this conversation one of personal and family choice and not one of this is a public good that serves all of us if we have access to these resources.
Yeah, I mean, this really is all part of making sure that we have an infrastructure, if you will, that supports
Yes.
people, supports employers, supports employees, supports their children, their dependents, because otherwise that then enables entrepreneurs like you who have so many great ideas and so much passion and so much resilience to actually just go out in the marketplace and not have to worry about these things. And yeah, I mean, as I said, the ACA was a big step forward, but you're absolutely right. We have a long way to go. We haven't talked about paid family leave, but I think the US is the only country other than a couple of small island nations in the Pacific
Yes.
don't have national paid family leave program. We've been instrumental in getting some of this passed at the state level, but there are 50 states and most of them still don't have it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's really about, I listen to you and I realize, you're, we need, our society needs
Yeah.
the type of entrepreneurs that you are. and not having to worry about these issues that should be fundamental.
Yeah.
So thank you again for navigating all of this. This is another example of entrepreneurs have to do that, and love to continue to have your support and work with you as we move forward on these issues. So I wanted to try to jump to the issue of capital or access to capital. Again, a big focus of ours. Just how have you been able to finance your businesses, and kind of what are your thoughts about some of the challenges you face there? And would kind of love to hear your story.
Absolutely. So I have financed my businesses both through bootstrapping, relying on, um, you know, retirement savings and things from previous jobs, savings. At times, I've tapped into my home equity to get financing when I wasn't able to find a small business loan that met the needs of my company. I have almost always been undercapitalized, which is difficult because, yes, you have fewer resources to work within that time, but also there are decisions that you make in survival mode that are not reflective of how you'd operate if you were well capitalized. And so there's kind of a lagging tail that even as you grow and are in a better position to secure outside capital, that you are still being penalized for how you had to make decisions um, when you were bootstrapping things. And I also recognize that I'm coming from an incredibly privileged place because I own my home and had access to equity that I could tap into, that I had savings in retirement that I could leverage, that I had the ability to, run crowdfunding campaigns to try to access capital if I couldn't get it through more traditional methods. But it is still extraordinarily burdensome. So like right now, if I have a program that I want to build out because there's a lot of need and demand for it, it takes money to put resources into developing those programs. And if I have to work on building my business, create new programmings, and deliver services to bring money in the door, it's very difficult to launch those new programs. And there's a gap there. Even when I've reached out with this business to companies for small business loans, they say, oh, under 2 years, we can't do that, even if the loan is fully collateralized. So there are just a lot of gaps that make it extraordinarily difficult to build a business to an impactful size, where you actually are creating quality jobs. And so I think a lot of the conversation is on the sizes of loans, but I think we need to take a step back and think from a risk mitigation perspective. What are other ways that we can mitigate risk? How can we restructure financial products so that we are mitigating risk while still getting dollars into the hands of the people that need it? And I won't get on that soapbox because financial deal structuring is something I can talk about all day long. But I think that there are answers there if we have people with capital come to the table and they're willing to get creative about how we get dollars into entrepreneurs that have the potential to change the world if they're adequately capitalized.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. I mean, one of the things I'm sort of remembering when running my business is that so often I made decisions based on short-term cash flow, which
Yep.
was necessary, making the next payroll,
Yep.
paying vendor. And, I sacrificed some of the longer term things. It would have been nice with some run room that financing would have helped with. And again, like you, I had some ability to generate some money, but still, I found it was having access to greater amounts of capital would have been really helpful. And we're focused on a couple of things in that area. The smaller loans are so essential. So many banks and other financial institutions, and even some CDFIs are just, it's so much more efficient for them to make the larger loans. And sometimes that's great. They're funding a project that
Yeah.
needs that, or it's got a lot of real estate under it, then that needs that. But for a lot of, to your point, for you and a lot of other entrepreneurs, you don't need, you don't always need large loans. In fact, it would be irresponsible to take a large loan. And alongside that, I mean, a big area for us is responsible lending, and we came really
Yeah.
close in Illinois, as you think you know, to passing
Yes.
the
Yeah.
the the uh, the bill that would have made business loans require the same disclosures as consumer loans. And so hopefully that'll pass in the next session next year. So you know, I love your thoughts on this. You sort of, I do want to talk a little bit about this because you talk about risk mitigation. I mean, ultimately, our feeling is that the government is really in the best position to do that. We see that with the SSBCI program,
Hmm.
where the government is stepping into sort of the first loss guarantor and then spurring a 10-to-1 lending ratio. And that's, that's great. It's $10 billion. But, even if that generates 100 billion over 10 years, that's still a lot less than the money that we need
Yeah.
out. So, well, kind of love your thoughts on, what more we all can do and what we can do on a policy level to, to leverage the government support and at a way that over time is not going to be a drain on the public coffers. It's going to pay for itself.
Well, I guess we'll see. Um, so from the policy side, I think I need to give that more thought about policies that can support this type of lending. To your point about the legislation we were trying to get passed in Illinois about the transparency in lending, something like that on a federal policy level would be transformative. One thing that I've seen with a lot of my clients is that even when they're not able to access capital from traditional routes, that they go to these merchant cash advance type places. And I had one client who took out some loans in an emergency, and she thought that she needed to pay back like $20,000 a month. And she actually was on the hook for more than $50,000 a month when I actually got the documents and poured through them to see what the repayment terms are. And a lot of these companies operate in ways where they're actively misleading people. And so they're taking businesses that are already at risk and then further endangering them. And so I think as a first line federal policy issue, that would be, where we start. Let people at least know what they're signing up for.